Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
In mere moments. Welcome to Seahawks Forever. If you're new to the channel, appreciate you tuning in. If you're not, I can't say enough about how I appreciate you taking the time to hop on and join in what should be a fun night for Seahawks fans and NFL fans. Like, if we love the draft, we love the draft, right? And it has become such an event. If you're watching now, you can see the massive crowd in Detroit. They have apparently started turning people away. They've shut the doors. They're at capacity. I don't know what the estimated attendance is there, but it looks like it looks like Coachella, but it's for an NFL draft. Only the nerdiest of nerdy fans would attend. I used to think, I tweeted this out a little bit ago, that it would be a fun event to go to. But as someone who loves to follow the draft the way I do, regardless of whether or not I'm creating any content around it, I just don't think I would enjoy that, right? I'd be on my phone the whole time. I'd want to see. Let me just put this into perspective. I have 10, 15, 16 windows open. What I have planned for you here today is we're going to react to this. We're going to watch it together. We're going to react together. You can certainly hop into the chat on whichever platform you're watching on. Mike Mandel is the first one to get in on it. Hey, Dan, how you doing? I'm good, Mike. How are you? Understand this. There is some latency. There is a little bit of a delay, obviously, in the live stream versus whichever streaming service you might be using or cable system to watch the draft tonight. So these reactions might be a little bit delayed. Dan Conroy is in as well. How you doing, Dan? Great name, by the way. Here's what I have queued up. I've got some resources. I've got some lists. I will try as soon as the Seahawks make a pick to get up some information about them. I also have Dane Brugler's The Beast Epic Scouting Guide queued up so that we can look at any information about any prospects. I'm also old school, so I like to have these around. Athon and Lindy's. And I will say this, Lindy's this year waited until after the Combine to publish their magazine. The biggest knock on those things is that they're done so early in the process, you don't get the full picture. And certainly some of their rankings reflect that. But I think Lindy's made a really nice effort this year to get it out a little bit later, because you would think that these magazines would become obsolete, right? With everything being done online. I also have Emory Hunt's game plan draft guide queued up as well, so I can see some of his feedback. Here's a couple things I have prepared for you. I like context, right? Well, first of all, here's the official full Seahawks draft order. Tonight, of course, just the one pick. If they make it, we'll talk about that possibility. They could trade all the way out of the first round. They have done it before. And then a third-round pick tomorrow. As we sit here today, only one pick on day 2. And then 2 fourths, 2 sixths, and a 7th on Saturday. And this is their draft class so far. Let me take this banner down here so it's not in the way. And this is, I've been showing this on Twitter for a couple of days, and I think it's important. Some of you might laugh at this or scoff at it, but it's allocation of really resources, right? As much as we have all lamented the lack of a second-round pick, and trust me, man, coming off of 2 years of having all those extra picks, extra high picks for the Russell Wilson trade, and being able to do those kinds of mock drafts and spending months fantasizing about what could be, and then having to figure out this year without a second-round pick has been tough. But that second-round pick has value, and it created a player. Leonard Williams is, the payoff for that pick, as is Sam Howell at a 4th. And the reason I put him in a 4th, I got some questions about this the other day, depending on which trade value chart you look at. But the Seahawks moving back with a 3rd and a 5th and swapping picks with Washington and getting back a 4th and a 6th equates on the trade chart to about a upper to mid 4th round pick. And so if the Seahawks don't take a quarterback in this draft, or they don't take the one you want, like they have acquired a quarterback using this year's draft. And so I absolutely will include them in the class. And I think anyone that does draft grades after this exercise, and this happens every year, without taking that into account, in my opinion, that's just short-sighted. You know, if you don't like what the Seahawks have and you go and you give them a B because there wasn't enough volume or you didn't think they had enough players in the top 100 and you failed to take into account that they used that pick to acquire one of the top, I don't know, whatever your list looks like, top 10, top 12 defensive linemen in the NFL, I think you're making a mistake. Some questions today for me, things to watch for right off the top. First of all, how many quarterbacks go before 16 and where do they go? The Michael Penix story has been fascinating. It's been all over the place. At one point, he had slipped into the second round, if you listen to the consensus. And then it sounded like he moved into the first round, but he was all over the place. Every mock draft you look at from the national guys the last week or so has him not getting past the Raiders at 13. And that's been some of the buzz in the reporting today as well. He's expected to go earlier than that. Bo Nix is a wild card. It seemed like he was the favorite among mock drafters for months, really, to go to Denver. And then that kind of – then he slipped into the second round. He was the guy who was falling. And now there's been like a resurgence. There's been a lot more buzz in the last couple of days about how Denver could still go that direction or maybe even trade down because they don't have a full assortment of picks themselves. And then when it gets to the Seahawks pick, is there someone there at 16 that they feel enough conviction about to stick and pick? Or do they want to create more opportunities, more bites at the apple for a new coaching staff, right? Throw more darts at the dartboard, give Mike McDonald and his new staff more players and more resources to work with to try and find blue chip players and trade down. There has been a lot of talk about teams wanting to move up for offensive tackles. Daniel Jeremiah tweeted out this morning, he said, based on phone calls I'm making, I can tell you one thing, teams want tackles and they're willing to move up to get them. The Philadelphia Eagles reportedly today, Jordan Schultz reporting that they have been the most aggressive team in calling all around the league, looking for opportunities to move up. For them, it's presumably a corner. And this is where 16 really becomes interesting. When you start to look at the mocks and you start to see the potential runs and you go quarterback first, will it be 3 or will it just be 4? For a few weeks there, the narrative was J.J. McCarthy at 4. The Cardinals kind of hold the cards, pun intended, at number 4, which will really dictate the rest of this draft. Teams wanting to move up and get McCarthy, maybe the Minnesota Vikings. There's some Atlanta Falcons buzz about McCarthy or Penix today. As Eminem comes walking out on the stage. Always got to represent Detroit there, right? And then the tackle and the wide receiver runs are going to happen, which could push down a guy like Brock Bowers, first of all, and then a really talented cornerback class. And that's what the Eagles are hunting for. There is a scenario where the Seahawks could get to their pick at 16 and literally have all of the corners left on the board. Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold rated at the top of that class. And so you could maybe leverage that and get as much as possible from Howie Roseman. But also, if there's going to be a curveball in this round, I've talked about it a few times on the show, myself and with other guests. Look, John Schneider has committed to taking best player available, regardless of position. They've done a nice job in free agency of hedging just about every position on this roster, so the glaring needs aren't as glaring. If the best player on their board at 16 is a corner and all the corners are still on the board, and they think a guy like Quinn, don't be shocked. I think that's the one pick that would freak the fan base out the most. But it's a possibility that you need to consider for your own sanity's sake, at least. All right, let's get back to the comments real quick. Dave, ESP, go Hawks. Juan Adame, let's go Hawks. Luke Westerberg, hi, everybody. What time is the first pick? It should be shortly. It should be any minute here now. How much pomp and circumstance are we sitting through first? A little bit. They got a lot of that out of the way, though. with the national anthem and all of that has been done ahead of time. Michael Fawcett with the super chat. Love your content. I'm going to have to watch your live tomorrow as my Hulu TV typically lags 30 seconds behind. Yeah. If you want to be in on the real time, you'll have to take care of that. But contributing with the donation through super chat, really, really appreciate that, Michael. Thank you so much. That's appreciate you guys taking the time to support the channel and tune in. One thing I was starting to say earlier, got sidetracked a little bit. There are a tremendous number of really high quality Seahawks content creators out there. And many of them you have seen on this show. And it's a cool community for the most part. We all respect each other, like each other, work together, do a lot of crossovers. And I have a ton of respect for them. Many of them are doing this exact same thing tonight and live streaming as well as I am. And so if you're choosing to be here with me, I really appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that didn't go unsaid. Ricardo says they actually go in corner. You have connections. I'm just saying. I was merely laying out a scenario where if the positional runs happen the way we think they're going to in the first 15, then corner becomes really compelling at 16 for the potential purposes of leveraging the pick or taking a guy if they want to. If there aren't any other players that they feel conviction about to stick at 16 and pick, and I think let's talk about those names. I think if I had my list of guys that I think that I would want them to stick and pick for, and that I think they might be tempted to, I think Troy Fautanu has been the most commonly mocked player to them the last few weeks. Would Schneider take an interior offensive lineman that high? I don't know. But if they simply take best player available, there's a good chance that he would be that guy if he makes it to 16. And his projections have really kind of varied now. They're all over the board. I've seen him go as high as 10 to the Jets. And now there's a lot of sentiment the last few days that the Seahawks could still get him if they trade down because of these reports that his knee has been flagged for a potential long-term problem. We don't know if the Seahawks flagged it, how they feel about his knee. Certainly they're going to know him as well as anyone with Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb on the staff. That's one. Jared Verse, I think, is another one. Byron Murphy. You all know how I feel about Byron Murphy, although the momentum for Murphy to go in the top 10 seems to be growing. He might be the first defensive player off the board, to be honest. If a Dallas Turner falls, and there seems to be some sentiment that could be happening, I think he might be a guy they would stick at 16 for. Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State might be one. But outside of that group, I think they're looking to move down. And then that brings a whole bunch of other players into the equation. Dave says, this is the first year I can recall so many fans clamoring for the Seahawks to trade back. Yeah, I do think that's because there isn't a second. I think fans have gotten more sophisticated, right? They have all these draft guides and rankings they can see online. They can do all these mock draft simulations themselves. I think fans have just become more educated about the draft process. And knowing, and the way it's formatted now too. I mean, maybe there wouldn't be as much stress if it was all still on one day or spread out over a Saturday and Sunday the way it used to be. But now with just the first round and then knowing that we only get one pick tomorrow if we don't make any trades, it's tough to live with because all these mock – you listen to any of the podcasts, any of the analysts, and they're talking about top 100 guys, right? And right now the Seahawks only have 2 picks in the top 100, and it's hard to swallow for some people. See, Ricardo says, if they trade Woolen, I'd be fine with it. What's Woolen worth in your opinion? Now, this is something that I'd given consideration to because there is some thought that maybe he's not the physical type of corner that Mike McDonald wants. Although if you go back to his UTSA tape and even some in his rookie year, you can find a bunch of plays of him coming up and laying the lumber on guys and being physical and hitting guys. The Chicago Bears are on the clock right now, about 7.5 minutes left. We know what they're going to do, but they'll probably take their time on this just to get the draft kicked off, lend a little drama. It's possible the league asks them to take their time. But But I have come around on this issue, Ricardo, that I want to see what Mike McDonald and his staff can do with Riq Woolen, and I don't want him going anywhere. Not that they won't field some calls. It's possible, especially after the cornerback group falls off, maybe late tomorrow, third round. Teams might call and offer a couple of picks. But, we'll know a lot more. There are some player moves that could come into play depending on what the Seahawks do today. What if they take a defensive tackle? Could they entertain trading Draymond Jones if a team is interested? And as Curtis Allen talked on the show with me a couple of days ago, save a tremendous amount of money and really free up some cap space. There are some selections they could take in the first round that would spur some discussion. If they take an edge player, if they take a Chop Robinson or a Dallas Turner, could Darrell Taylor be a potential trade candidate tomorrow or Saturday in an edge group that falls off a cliff after the first 7 or 8 guys? It's possible. I'd rather be flying an I can't see the whole X-Wing. Rather be flying an X-Wing. Another super or super chat. Really appreciate that. Thanks for chipping in. Thank you for all your hard work. You've quickly become one of my most trusted shows. So excited to watch the draft live with you. Thank you very much. Thoughts on Malik Washington, Jamari Thrash as Division III wide receivers? I love small school guys. I think the new, especially Malik Washington, I think from what I understand has some kick return ability. He's kind of a yards after catch guy, which is certainly something that I know Ryan Grubb would be looking for out of this crew. That's why D. Eskridge is being given another opportunity, right? I think that's why Laviska Shenault was signed. That, especially if he has some value in the return game, suddenly the kickoff return has become part of the game again. And I like that. I have been saying for weeks, if not months, that while a lot of the fan base thinks we're set, quote unquote, at receiver, and I have been told numerous times by numerous fans that any draft pick used on a receiver this year would be a waste of a draft pick. I have pushed back hard against that, and I have presented the fact that just get ready because they're probably going to take a receiver at some point in the draft. You should take one every year these days. Look what receivers are getting paid. A.J. Brown just got paid half an hour ago. Amon-Ra St. Brown became the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history yesterday, and that lasted 24 hours. Now A.J. Brown getting in their DK, just sitting back, thinking about next year when they start those conversations, right? If they haven't already, as Curtis Allen suggested, maybe they should start those conversations now if they want to lock him up long term. It'd be an easy way to, well, not easy because you're going to have to commit $35-ish million a year. Be a way to really clear up a lot of 2025 cap space by lowering that hit. Jamari Thrash is around one football name, says Luke Westerberg. I agree with that. I do love names. Man, I do love names. Mike Mundell says, I'd love to see us sign Lincoln Victor from the Cougs. I think he's a guy that should probably have a pretty robust market as an undrafted free agent. I think he's being slept on. I think as a slot receiver, a guy with some quickness and catches everything, catches in traffic, and a guy that can do some things in the return game. I already love Aesop Winston, who we already have on the roster, and hope he gets an opportunity. But Lincoln Victor, I hope, lands somewhere with a chance to do something cool. Unfortunately, just to say this, because of the way I'm streaming through StreamYard, I'm usually able to put your comments up on the screen, and I like that feature. But the way I'm doing this through YouTube tonight, the comments are coming through YouTube, and it doesn't give me that opportunity. I wish that was something that was available. I wish that was a feature. 170 of you watching right now. 170 have chimed in so far. Appreciate that. The pick is in for the Chicago Bears. Who do you think it's going to be? And some of you may already know it because I'm probably the one. Well, not necessarily, no. Because I'm watching on Fubo, so I'm going to be getting it in real time. What do you guys think of Caleb Williams? Do any of you think the Bears are making a mistake here? They better be sure. They better be sure because it seemed like they locked in on this pick really early in the process. Like it didn't even appear to me that they went through the process. I wonder how much of that was driven by fan reaction and just the fact that we've had 2 years of conversation about Caleb going first overall. I've had some guys on recently that do scouting and analysis and writes draft guides, and I always like to ask them, like, how hard is it to be open-minded, to be open to changing your mind about someone if new information comes along? And I suspect that there's a lot of people that refuse to acknowledge that Williams might have some bust potential just because they made up their mind a long time ago. I honestly don't know. I think he's a tough evaluation. There's talent's there, certainly. But when you see what he did at USC last year, like, he had to play hero ball. His team was trailing in almost every game significantly. He had to outscore teams. Like, when you look at their numbers last year of how many times their defense gave up 30 plus, 40 plus. And so some of those tendencies he had last year to play hero ball, to kind of, prime Russell Wilson years when we were starting to get frustrated with him because he held the ball too long and always was looking for the home run and wouldn't just take completions. That was a little bit of Caleb Williams' game last year. So I think the question with him is, can he play on schedule? Can he play on time? Can he play from the pocket? And then when things break down, he has elite ability to get outside the pocket and create, throw from different platforms and arm angles and make all the throws. But I also wonder this, like, is Shane Waldron the right guy to get the best out of Caleb Williams? That, to me, was an odd choice by the Bears this offseason. But who knows? Maybe Shane will go prove us all wrong. Padrack, the end of the Seahawks draft should have a couple of asterisks: Leonard Williams and Sam Howell. As I did put up that graphic, for those of you just joining me, this is how I kind of rate the draft board so far for the Seahawks. I think you have to look at it this way. We already have 2 players out of this draft: Leonard Williams and Sam Howell. Leonard Williams is better than any defensive tackle that you could possibly take in this draft. Period. Sam Howell in this draft, I haven't really given this any consideration, but just based on my own rankings, I'd probably put him, it's a good class, right? I'd probably put him 6th. I'd put him ahead of Bo Nix, but behind Michael Penix, just because that arm is so special for Penix, and I like the top 4 guys. So I'd put him 5th in this class. I'm sorry, 6th, ahead of Nix. So if I told you that you got the best defensive tackle in this entire draft, age notwithstanding, but I think Williams has plenty of good years left in him, and you got the 6th best quarterback in this class, and you still have your 1st, your 3rd, 2 4ths, 2 6ths, and a 7th, would you feel pretty good about the draft class to start off with? I mean, that's how I look at things, right? Mike Mundell says he thinks Sam is Sam Darnold Jr. Could be, but I'll tell you this. I think Darnold has tremendous talent, but he is a classic case of a guy that was drafted into a bad situation and just had no chances because either bad coaching, bad offensive line, bad offensive coordination, not enough talent around him. Like, once you develop those bad habits and start to see ghosts, right? The famous Monday Night Football mic'd up moment from him. It's tough. It's tough to come back from that, which makes Geno Smith's story even more remarkable because he went through that in the exact same place, actually. And for his career to come full circle like that, I could see Darnold having that type of resurgence someday if the situation's correct. I think being with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota is a great opportunity for him. It's just that I think we're going to see them draft a quarterback here in the next hour, and he's not going to get that opportunity. Denko44 says, I'm very curious how 11 through 13 is going to go. Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty chalky from here through 8 or 9, up to about Atlanta. There is one of the interesting curveballs that's being reported today is if the Chargers stay at 5, that, for a long time it was assumed they would take one of these elite receivers. You could get the 2nd receiver on the board, most likely, assuming Harrison goes 4 to the Cardinals or whoever trades up into that spot. You can get Malik Nabers, or you can go with a Rome Odunze. But now I think it's been consensus that it's going to be an offensive tackle. We heard Harbaugh's comments a month ago. We've seen his track record. But just today, a couple of these big mock drafts, including Daniel Jeremiah's, they have JC Latham going to the Chargers ahead of Joe Alt. And they have Alt falling all the way to the Titans. Now, that may surprise some people because Alt has been the consensus top OT in this class for a long time on most lists. But Latham is a natural right tackle, and the Chargers already have Rashawn Slater, right? So rather than, trying to move a guy over, it's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Washington pick is in. This was Drake Maye for months. In the last couple of weeks, the consensus seems to have been that it's Jaden Daniels, and I think that's going to be the pick here for Dan Quinn in Washington, his first year as head coach of the Commanders. By the way, did any of you watch last year when I live streamed during the draft? Anybody remember that? I learned a big lesson last year. I actually shared the NFL Network feed on the live stream and got a huge copyright strike from YouTube. I was banned from live streaming for 90 days. I won't be making that mistake this year. I'm watching on Fubo, but in a totally other window. I don't think you can hear the audio. Don't want to take any chances. It actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise in some ways, because during that 90 days, I went from recording my shows live and just letting them live on my YouTube page to fully post-producing them and uploading them as completed episodes. And I came to prefer that, and actually found that the YouTube algorithm likes that a little bit better. And so the audience started to grow a little bit more significantly and organically. Here comes the Commander selection. It's got to be Jaden Daniels, right? And then the fun's going to begin, right? This gets really fun at 3. There we go. I'm fascinated to see what kind of career he has. He's so skinny. His frame scares me. I know he's put some weight on, but you see those legs, man, and especially the way that they don't wear pads anymore. It just freaks me out as an old school, very old dude, who played football a million years ago. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to play without knee pads. They got rid of the hip pads a long time ago, and the tailbone pad, right? They got rid of that, went to just the padded shorts. But now they don't even wear knee pads. It's weird to me. He's so skinny. But the thing about Daniels, too, is being a Pac-12 guy. I remember as a true freshman at Arizona State watching him beat WSU with his legs and his arms. And I just thought he was a fun college quarterback that can move around and make plays. Never, ever saw an NFL prospect out of him. And I don't even think when he transferred to LSU, anybody thought of him as an NFL prospect. Even after 2022, I think maybe he was viewed as a draftable guy, but nobody would have told you before last college football season that Jaden Daniels was going to be a top 2 pick in the NFL draft. And I think this is important context, because as we look ahead to next year's draft, depending on what the Seahawks do in this draft and over the next 6-8 months, they might be looking for a quarterback. And you've heard about how next year's class is, some have called it downright bad. Shane Hallam on my show last week called it bad, but at best it's been referred to as uncertain. Maybe there aren't any top 10, top 15 guys, which could play into the Seahawks' favor, because then you can get some value. You can get guys in the middle of the first round, second round. We haven't had a draft like that in a while. But there's a chance that one of these guys is going to take a step forward, just like Jaden Daniels has, and become a top 5 pick. So, that possibility always exists. Let's catch up on some comments. Quentin Gallagher, appreciate all you do, Dan. Thank you, Quentin. Appreciate you. If Joshua Smith, if Penix makes it to 16, he's my top choice. Let me tuck that away, and we'll talk about the Penix thing here for a minute. Mike Mundell says, I'm not sure why the Chargers wouldn't take one, because they lost both receivers. True, but this offensive tackle class is so good, and the receiver class is deep. They're both deep, but I think the receiver class a little bit deeper. I think you can do better in the second round. get a franchise tackle to get you your bookends with Slater, second round, man, you could still get a big-time receiver top of the second round. That's the way I would go. Luke Westerberg says, fully produces better, more work, but better. I appreciate that. And I've got my workflow down, too. What you see as a finished product on YouTube usually only takes me an hour to 90 minutes tops after I'm done recording the actual show itself to put it all together. I've got it down to a pretty good science now. Luke says, Jaden Daniels is my size, and I'd get killed out there. Appreciate the self-awareness. And, Commanders are going to have to build up that offensive line. I would imagine that's a big focus for them later in this draft, especially with those. They have those 2 picks. I think they have 36 and 40 in the second round. There'll be some good value there, interior and at tackle, to address, or if they want to move up into the late first round maybe and get a guy that's falling, they have the ammo to do that. Gornish Slick with a super like. Appreciate that. Thank you for contributing to the show. He says, love the show, Dan. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that. Man, I wish I could put these. I wish I could put those comments on the screen. Come on, YouTube. 62 viewers at the moment. It's 269 views since we started. Thanks, guys. Okay. So Rappaport is it was reported a couple hours ago that the Patriots at 3 just hadn't gotten any offers they liked. They were going to stick at 3, but it sounds like the Vikings and Giants made last-ditch efforts to get up to 3. So that tells you the Giants are in on the quarterback thing, which is interesting given that they just gave Daniel Jones a huge deal 2 years ago and then signed Drew Lock to a deal that would pay him $8 million if he starts a certain number of games. New England, the pick is it's got to be Drake Maye, right? Now, let's see. This could be the first curveball. If New England were to go with a Marvin Harrison Jr. here, this would be the first curveball of this draft and kind of create a ripple effect that could get really interesting. I would think it's Drake Maye, but I don't agree with that. I just don't know. Brand new coaching staff, brand new regime. Drake Maye is generally considered to be the guy that needs the most time to sit, might need a Jordan Love type plan. New England has nothing. Is that the worst roster in the NFL? It might be right now. And you're going to play a kid? I really hope if they take Drake Maye here, because I do believe in the kid's ceiling. And I know Michael Thompson, friend of the show from 12th Man Rising, he's been a big Drake Maye guy to me for 2 years. Like, he's his dude. But he needs to wait his turn. This is a risky pick if they go Drake Maye here. Yep. Yeah. You better be committed to not playing this guy. All right, so I did get a comment through on StreamYard. This must be through Facebook or Twitter. If you're watching the live feed on Twitter and you reply on Twitter, it may show up this way, and I can stick it on the screen like this. John Scott, you rock, Dan. Great content all year. Thank you. I appreciate the support. And I will say this, like the growth of the channel has been so great over the last year. The more it grows, the more motivated I am to do more content. It's just kind of a snowball effect. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun year. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Robert Rowett. I really hope we stay at 16. What do you guys think? Let's do a little poll. Would you rather, like, everything's gone chalk now. We knew these 3 quarterbacks were going to go the first 3. Although, again, I think New England's making a mistake. Yeah, that's tricky. Do you prefer generally to stick at 16 and just take a shot at a blue chip guy and then figure out value the rest of the draft? Or do you want to move down? Man, I just hope. I think Maye in this situation is the biggest boom or bust prospect in this draft now. I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to put him in a position to succeed. He's got no weapons there. Like, what are they going to do about that? right? They got to fix the offensive line. They got to get us some weapons. I don't know. But now things get really interesting because Arizona sits in the catbird seat at 4. The quarterbacks are gone. Hey, Minnesota, you want to come up and get JJ McCarthy now? Or the Giants want to come up and get JJ McCarthy? Okay, this is where you do it. And the Cardinals, it scares me a little bit. You've all seen the video of Monty Austinforth, the new GM. They're like working the phones last year, right? Including talking to John Schneider. Like, he seems incredibly sharp for a first-year GM. Like, he was ready for that gig. And I'm a little worried. I'm not a big Kyler Murray guy. I think the fact they decided to ride with him is probably a good thing. But they're going to add some talent this year. They got a lot of picks, and he's going to move around. And so if a team wants to come up and get McCarthy now, this is where this could start to get interesting. I don't think it impacts the Seahawks that much what happens at this pick, because if McCarthy doesn't go 4th, I think at worst he goes, 11th to Minnesota? If he gets past the Giants at 6. So this will be an interesting turning point. Michael Centalonza. Hey, Dan, hope all is well. You too, Michael. Luke just asked if Odunze and Drake Maye just hugged. They may work out together. They may have a similar agent. Let's see here. Let's go. It's about 50-50, it seems like. Those of you that want to stay at 16, those of you that want to move down. I will say this. Let me do this. I'm going to get the Rich Hill trade chart queued up and ready. There's a lot of talk about the Eagles wanting to move up. There's a lot of talk about the Steelers wanting to move up, in particular for Graham Barton, who I would love to see as a Seahawk. So just to give you some context, because there's a lot of sentiment that, like, hey, I want to move back if it gets us a second-round pick. So based on the Rich Hill trade chart, the last pick in the second round is worth 80 points. It's Kansas City's pick at 64. So to find 80 points in value, the Seahawks, who according to the Rich Hill chart have 305 points, would have to move back to 26 at Tampa in order to pick up, and then they would get Tampa's the 57th pick. That's about where you have to move back to in order for it to be an even trade. So, there's been some sentiment out there that, like, hey, just trade back with Philadelphia and pick up a second. It's not going to happen. Now, I have seen a lot of this because this does match up on the trade chart. We'll send Philadelphia 16 and 81, and then we get back 22 and 53. I don't love that. Yeah, you move up 30 spots to get a better player with your second pick, but you don't gain any picks. I want some more volume out of the top 100 in this draft. So I would be – now, you want to move back with Philadelphia and pick up a third and then move back again and start to pick up some volume that way. If you pick up multiple, don't be disappointed if their first move only nets a third-round pick, because maybe they move back multiple times and you can use those picks then to move up into the second round for a guy that you really want. They've done that before. They did it to get DK Metcalf. Cardinals. It's got to be Harrison. Yeah. So somewhat surprising that the Cardinals decided to stick. But I guess not when you consider elite wide receiver prospect, incredible bloodlines, everything, even though I don't love that he didn't basically do anything in the draft process, didn't work out at the combine, didn't really do a pro day, guess he didn't have to. First non-quarterback taken in this draft, and you get Kyler Murray, an elite, big-time wide receiver. Let's hope that Reek Woolen is up to the challenge, right? He can shadow this guy all around the field. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. Saw a mock earlier that had us taking a corner. Given the choice, I might want Quinyon Mitchell. I love Quinyon Mitchell. And you know who he's been mocked to, or his most common NFL comp has been? It's Devin Witherspoon. Like you see some nastiness like that on tape. And the cool thing about him is he played, when you look at his college tape, he's playing way off. Like they never let him come up and play press man. So that's a huge question mark. You're trying to evaluate him on tape. You don't get to see it. He goes to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and he takes to press man like he'd been playing his whole life. Just ate it up. Loved it. If he's on the board at 16, that gets really, really interesting. Mitchell, Luke says Mitchell or DeJean would be fun under McDonald. Of all the players I've seen projected or mocked to the Seahawks in the first round at any point, whether at 16 or later, DeJean's the most polarizing one I've seen. Some people hate that idea and some people love it. Bryce from the Hawk Zone Rundown podcast checking in from 30,000 feet. Where are you flying to, Bryce? Somewhere sunny and nice, I hope. John Vandermolen and Graham Barton with the trade back would be awesome. I absolutely love Graham Barton. Huge fan. I don't think we're gonna get a shot out of him though, unless we want to take him at 16. Yep, Dave ESP says totally chalk so far. You're right. This tends to happen. I feel like I can't remember now if it was last year or the year before where it was like all of this speculation that there were going to be a ton of trades and it didn't end up happening. All right. I think this is a good time with the Chargers on the clock. This show brought to you by Blue Moon tonight, this episode. There's better beer out there, but when you just want to grab something at the store really quick and just have a decent beer in your fridge and you're not sure if you want to handle something too hoppy or too strong, it's tough to beat. All right, so our division rivals get a big time offensive prospect. Here's John again. I want Byron Murphy to cause headaches for the Niners and Rams each year. Byron Murphy is maybe my favorite pick at 16 outside of Troy Fautanu. Absolutely love the dude. I think I was on him fairly early in the process. I would – if they take Murphy at 16, I'd be like, the rest of the draft is basically just frosting on the cake for me at this point. But it seems like he's been rising and may not make it out of the top 12, let alone the top 15. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. Question for GM Dan Viance. Boy, don't I wish. You have the pick at 16, Quinyon Mitchell, Troy Fautanu, or trade back. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I have to stick. This is where it comes into play where, it's easy to overanalyze. I got to stick with my gut, and that's I want blue chip players. I want all pros. And I think both of those guys have all pro potential, and I'm taking Troy Fautanu. I don't care that you just signed Laken Tomlinson. I think that guy's nasty. I think he's an all pro waiting to happen. He's a potential Hall of Famer, and I think he gives you so much. I think he's athletic enough and smart enough that, he's only played on the left side so far in his career. But if Tomlinson shows up and proves that he's still got something left in the tank, and you want to stick that grizzled veteran there at left guard next to Charles Cross, that Troy Fautanu can go over to the right side. And if Lucas isn't ready to go, he can play tackle. And if he would certainly beat out Anthony Bradford at right guard. And maybe you can even get a pick for moving Bradford to a team that's more of a gap-based kind of a power scheme, right? Because I think he has a lot of upside. And you can move him over to right guard until, and then next year maybe you move him back to the left side. Or if, 2 years from now you don't feel like Charles Cross deserves a big second contract and he's just a middle-of-the-road tackle and you can't come to an agreement with him, okay, kick Fautanu back out to tackle there, and now you have your left tackles on a rookie contract. He's my guy, and I have to stick with that. They say don't ever change your answer on a test, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. That's the reason I ask all these scouting guys how they handle that. Like, Fautanu's my dude, and if he's there at 16, I'm not hesitating. I'm taking him all day long. If he's gone and Mitchell's there at 16, I'm really tempted to take him too because I think he's cornerback one in this class. I think Witherspoon's going to play mostly in the slot. We've heard that from a bunch of guys on the show. Paul Moyer himself said it. Greg Bell said it. I think he's going to fit that McDonald defense the most and be able to wreak the most havoc. I don't care what you think about a guy being number 5 overall, only being a slot receiver for value. Just put great players on the field and let them play and do what they do best. And if you get a guy like Quinyon, imagine Quinyon Mitchell, Reek Wallen on the boundaries, and Devin Witherspoon in the slot. I mean, I might stick and pick for one of those two guys. I really might. Unless someone blows me away, unless they want to overpay. You want to give me a second just for moving down? Hey, Philly, you want to give me the second with nothing else? You want to overpay for that pick? Then I'm probably doing that too. Probably do that because then I can get a Barton instead of Fashanu, or I can get a Fuaga, right? Or maybe I can get a Terrion Arnold or a Cooper DeJean. So I know that wasn't the most definitive answer, but that's as close as I can come. Not a fan of another DB in round 1. This is from Denko44, but in Mike, I trust. DeJean is crazy flexible when it comes to positioning. Yeah, he is. And he would most likely play. I don't know. I don't know how you'd use him, to be honest. Maybe if you get a guy like DeJean, then maybe Witherspoon just stays on the outside. And maybe he becomes that guy. Because here's one thing that I think Mike McDonald's done. He did it with Marlon Humphrey that Pete Carroll never or rarely did, is he'll let his cornerbacks travel. So maybe then Devin Witherspoon becomes your lockdown dude that you just stick on a wide receiver 1 and he follows them all over the field, and DeJean becomes your slot guy. Yeah. All right. 2 minutes to go. So I would imagine the Chargers are taking some phone calls because with their needs, receiver, tackle, right? They can move down, recoup some picks for a new staff. This would make a lot of sense. And still get a big-time tackle prospect or a big-time wide receiver prospect. They can move down if the Giants want to come up 1 pick just to be sure, or if Minnesota wants to come up. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks. If you want to come up to 5 and take JJ McCarthy because you think the Giants might do it, that could be what's happening right now. And if you're the Chargers, you're trying to get Minnesota both of their first-round picks, right? But I don't think that really matches. Let's see what that looks like. So 23 and 11 is about 600 points. And so that Chargers pick is worth about 468 on Rich Hill. So that's a huge overpay. So that's probably what the Chargers are doing, is trying to get them to pay as much as they can. Okay, the pick is in for the Chargers now. And this could be Latham. This might be the first surprise of the draft. Joe Alt has been OT1 on just about every big board that you see for months. But just today, there was some buzz about Latham here instead. Okay. Wow, imagine this is kind of the Detroit Lions thing, right? They took Penei Sewell, 3rd overall, I think, a couple years ago when they still had, who was their left tackle? Taylor Decker? Am I getting that right? I mean, they have Rashawn Slater on a rookie contract. Rashawn Slater has had some injury issues, but he has top 5 left tackle upside in the NFL. So now you bring Joe Alt in, you put him on the right side. And you're creating an opportunity now for Justin to get the most out of Justin Herbert, right? And now you have the entire rest of the draft to try and tap in to some of this wide receiver talent, of which there's so much of it left in the draft. Yeah, I think that's a good call. That's how you have to build that. You're Jim Harbaugh. That's how you're going to build it. Now, what are the Giants going to do, right? They have been, I'd say 90% of mock drafts over the last couple of months have had them taking Malik Nabers, occasionally Rome Odunze, especially after they signed Drew Lock and gave him that incentive-based contract. When they were trying to move up with the Patriots, was it to get Maye? Are they not as high on Maye as they are, or on McCarthy as they are on Maye? Or are the Giants about to take JJ McCarthy? And if that happens, what does that do to Michael Penix's stock? Because there's a lot of buzz about him to the Falcons at 8 too. So I love the draft. I love the draft so much. So those of you who don't know, my real job is I work evenings. And so for years, like it was really, really tough for me to pay attention to the draft. I'd have to sneak looks at my cell phone while I'm working. 2 years ago, I vowed to myself, never again. And it was the first year after the Russell Wilson trade, so we had all those extra picks, right? And last year I did what I'm doing now, and I'll continue to do it moving forward. It's in fact, I took this entire weekend off, and so I was going to work Saturday night, but I still would have been able to watch the draft. I just wouldn't have been able to do a recap show until either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. As it is now, I took that whole night off because I'm going to see a band that I've always wanted to see, but every time they come to town, I'm busy, and I'm going with some buddies on Saturday night to see a band. So I took that off, and the added bonus of that is I'll be able to do a full recap show as soon as the draft is over. So I'll be able to get that up Saturday evening and give you my thoughts on the entire Seahawks draft class. All right, what are the Giants doing? Looks like they're sticking and picking. Are the Giants going to throw the first curveball? I don't know that it's a curveball, really, and take JJ McCarthy. I'm not going to look at anything. I don't want anyone to give away the pick. Tell me, I tested this before I went live, but if any of you can hear the audio from the NFL Network when I turn it up, let me know, because I'll need to be careful about that. I don't want anything to be picked up by their software or anything. I don't want any copyright issues, but I tested it before I went on. I was able to listen to it in another window and not have it bleed over into what I'm doing with you guys. If you guys can hear it at all, let me know. Okay. Yeah, I wish I could do something about the delay. And you know what? There's different options in YouTube, and I choose the lowest latency choice. It's just, here's what you can do. If you could, you'd have to stay off Twitter. But Dana and I used to do this when we did the live streaming during the games on that PSF app. If you're watching on a streaming service, well, even on Xfinity cable or whatever these days, just pause it, you find out how behind I am, and then just pause it for that amount of time. I used to be pretty good about that. And we would sync it up perfectly. Dana would be like, okay, he just went under center. And I'd be like, okay, pause it. Okay. Okay, there go Nabers. Interesting. So this is fascinating. I know McCarthy's kind of a polarizing prospect among fans and apparently scouts too, that the Giants were willing to move up to 3 to get Maye, but they don't like McCarthy at 6. Interesting. Drew Lock's a happy dude right now, right? He's not only did they not take another quarterback, but they got him a sweet weapon. I mean, this is a dude you can just get it out to on a slant and let him go, man. Yeah. So now what? So Tennessee's going to go offensive line. They have to, right? Peter Skoronski's the only thing they have going on there. But it's a deep enough – this is where it gets cool. It's a deep enough tackle class that, let's say you're Minnesota and you really want J.J. McCarthy. Are you worried that Atlanta's going to take him and sit him behind Cousins for a couple of years? Are you worried someone else might come up? Maybe Denver tries to jump up now to get McCarthy, right? If you're Tennessee, you can move down 5 spots and still get a Latham or a Fashanu or a Fuaga or Fatanu. They have to address offensive line. They're in a position now here where They could be in play for a kind of a fun trade back. You can see Seattle's on the bottom there on the scroll. Here's a little poll question for y'all. Are you watching on ESPN or NFL Network? Spoiler alert, I haven't watched ESPN in years. I've been strictly NFL Network. Their draft coverage is okay. I just don't watch the network anymore except for live TV. I just don't like their programming. Oh, this has been a cool thing that guys have done the last couple of years where they do custom liners in their jacket with some cool stuff. CBS online. Is that online? TSM? Just on. Let's see here. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah, Albert Breer saying the Vikings could just be in great position to just sit at 11 and get McCarthy and still have their second first. How great would that be if it fell that way? Unless anyone wants to jump up ahead of them. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing says watching ABC on an old school rabbit ear antenna. I love that. So you probably have a couple of these around then, right? Probably got the old school draft guides too. Oh, I just love looking at those. I hope they never go away. Okay, so Tennessee's just sticking and picking. So all the buzz about quarterbacks and all the buzz about McCarthy, and at the end of the day, I think teams just aren't willing to pay the freight. These teams teams have come to value draft picks, I think, more than they ever have. I don't know that you're going to see teams give up 3 first-round draft picks anymore to move up for a certain guy because the bust rate is so high on him, and those picks are so valuable. Tennessee's got to take a tackle here. It's either Latham or Fashanu, right? I mean, if they don't take an offensive lineman here with this class and with the state of their offensive line and trying to develop and protect Will Levis, it's probably a fireable offense. Not a single trade yet. Who would have thought that? And it could stay that way. And maybe the quarterbacks start to fall and it becomes even more interesting for Seattle. Let's talk about that for a minute, though. The best case scenario for the Seahawks is for the quarterbacks to go. And so I think McCarthy's for sure going to go. Is Atlanta going to take Penix or the Raiders going to take Penix? If Denver were to go for Bo Nix, it's been all over the board. He's a second rounder. He's a first rounder. Now today, again, there's some buzz that they might still go Nix. 6 quarterbacks going before 16 would be the best case scenario for the Seahawks. It would just push down better players. And we get to Atlanta, if they decide not to go with Penix, and they came out to Seattle for a full workout, they have been said to really love him. There has been some momentum towards that being the pick. Otherwise, up until that point, it had been assumed that they were going to take the first defensive player off the board, which for a long time was probably most commonly mocked as Dallas Turner. But I've seen some Byron Murphy stuff in the last couple of days, and that's a guy that I would really love to be there at 16 for the Seahawks. I can see Jared Verse being a fit there as well at 8 with Raheem Morris. If it stays chalk, right, Atlanta's going to go Dallas Turner. Chicago's going to go Rome Odunze. The Jets would go with another offensive tackle, I would imagine, although there's some Brock Bowers sentiment out there as well. That's probably the earliest that Bowers goes. Minnesota goes McCarthy. Denver, who knows what they're going to do? Who knows? Maybe they do go Penix or Nix. And the Raiders, if Penix is on the board, go Penix. New Orleans has to go offensive tackle. Has to. That could be Fashanu, unfortunately. Colts receiver. There's been a lot of receiver connections there throughout the draft process. Who would be wide receiver 4 in this class? Maybe a Brian Thomas. And then Seattle at 16. X-Wing says, part of me hopes Penix is gone by 16. I don't want to face that choice. Kind of with you. Like, here's where I stand on Penix. I don't want to get into this too heavily because we might be on the clock and he might be available. I don't want that to be the pick just because of what I view the big picture at right now and some other needs and how I view this draft. Let me put it this way. There's players that when the Seahawks pick him at 16, you know, and some of them I won't know my reaction until it happens. There's some that if they stick and pick at 16, I'll be elated they take. And then there are some that I won't immediately be elated, but I'll be able to reconcile myself with the pick quickly, and Penix is one of those. Latham. Smart move. In fact, Tennessee's one of those places he might have an opportunity to play left tackle. I think some teams might have seen him as a right tackle. It's just a great example of how all the buzz and anticipation leading up to draft night, and sometimes it just doesn't deliver on the drama that was promised. Not a single trade yet. Not one. So Atlanta has some intrigue, as I talked earlier. I think the consensus has been that they would take the first defensive player off the board, which is certainly an opportunity here. But they also have been known to really, really like Michael Penix. Oh, Sean, I didn't see that. Sean L says, sorry, just jumped in late. How about Schneider and McDonald posting a video in front of Sherman's picture earlier? Did not see that. I'll have to follow up on that a little bit later. Okay, yeah. That's a little scary watching that. I guess it was just 3 weeks ago. It came out today that Commissioner Goodell had back surgery. I want to be careful with those hugs. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being the dude that effed up the commissioner? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We've got 73 viewers at the moment, 462 so far. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, please do. It's the best way to support the channel. Just the more subscribers there are, the more views we get, and the more we grow, and the more we get to interact and have fun like this. You can also hit super thanks, super chat down below, and get in on it that way as well. And I just appreciate you being here. I know there's a lot of stuff going on a night like this. There's a lot of options, a lot of places that you can watch guys live streaming. And thanks for being here. God, Latham's a big dude, isn't he? Roger Goodell confirming he's okay. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. I wish I could post this one on the screen again. Come on, YouTube. If you're watching this, tell Dan thanks for the like tonight. He's earned it. I appreciate it. This is fun for me. This is a passion project for me. I don't ever view it as work, even though it's legitimately become what I would consider. I would describe it as a side gig. I would like for it someday to be more than that. You know, the dream is to be able to cut back on my actual career job, be able to do this a little bit more often. So I have a really cool meeting actually tomorrow with a media company. So fingers crossed. Wish me luck. Could take another step towards it. All right. Ian Rappaport right now, the pick is in for Atlanta, saying that it could be Penix. I'm telling you, as many. I know there's a lot of Seahawks fans out there that want Penix, that see it as a perfect fit. And I would, as I said, I would not have been mad if they decided to go that route at 16. You're doubling down between he and Howell. You're good chance you're going to have your quarterback of the future. So why not double up on that, right? Do the RG3 Kirk Cousins thing. But if Atlanta takes Penix, I think it works into the Seahawks' favor. Because, again, not a single defensive player has been taken yet. So if you go quarterback here, Chicago's going to go receiver. Jets are going to go tight end or tackle. Minnesota's going to go McCarthy. Denver may go Nix. But maybe then, Denver, that leaves you maximum 4 teams in front of you that will take defensive players. Wow. They did it. I'm so happy for this dude. I have goosebumps right now. I am so happy for Michael Penix. I mean, I'm a Coug, right? I don't care. I live in Seattle. I've been watching this guy, what he went through injury-wise, his career at Indiana, transferring to UW, no NIL money, right? Nothing was promised to him. They had just signed the youngest Heward kid, who was a 5-star national player of the year. Like, I am so happy for Michael Penix, and I think that's a great move for Atlanta. Like, you signed Kirk Cousins. You stick this guy, you do the Jordan Love thing with it. Yeah, he'll be 26 years old by the time that the torch is passed. Okay. You're set at the quarterback position moving forward. Now you can focus on everything else. Wow. Supposed to be a great leader. Who's the offensive coordinator? Just Zach Robinson? Isn't that who they hired for the Rams? That's a McVay thing, right? That's cool. That's really cool. Are any of you crushed? I know a lot of Seahawks fans probably are right now because they wanted Penix. But this is good for the Seahawks. Let's go through this again. The Bears are going to take Odunze here. The Jets are going to go offensive tackle or Brock Bowers, I believe. Then Denver, like Vegas right now, there was all the Penix to Vegas thing going on. They might be crushed right now. So maybe they go defense. Maybe Denver and Vegas both go defense, unless Bo Nix goes to one of those teams. New Orleans has to go offensive line, but that's a fireable offense as well. And then I think Indianapolis, it sounds like, is set on receiver. So whoever you consider the top 3 defensive players to be, let's say it's some combination of Murphy, Verse, and Turner. One of those guys is going to be available for Seattle at 16. How do you feel about that? And the way it's shaping up right now, yeah, Chicago didn't take long to turn this pick in. This got to be Rome Odunze. Penix and Odunze going back-to-back. 2 Huskies, right? That'd be pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, they didn't waste any time. And if you're Minnesota, man, unless the Jets want to move down a little bit, right? If they want to tackle, there's a lot of them in this class. They reportedly early in the process really loved Taliese Fuaga. You could slide down. Let's say Denver wants to jump up 2 spots, which would only cost them. Let's see if Denver wants to come up. God, I love this stuff. It's so much fun. Denver wants to go up to 10. It's a 20-point jump. Now, for a quarterback high in the draft, they might be able to leverage more than that. Why is this not? So just to play around with this idea, it would cost Denver, by the chart, 121, a mid-4th, but you can get more out of that. Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't cost much. I wonder if Denver is going to be trying to get up with the Jets, because the Jets can move down from 10 to 12 and still get one of those tackles or Bowers. Rome Odunze here, right? Or Bowers? Yeah. 2 Huskies go back-to-back. How cool is that for them? How cool is that for them? Luke says, did Rome talk to JSN about Waldron? Yeah, I'm sure he did. All right. Yeah, it's a fascinating spot to be in for the Jets. Like, if Denver or Vegas wants to come up and get McCarthy, you could get more than the chart says you should get. Because, again, by the chart, Denver could give them their mid-4th and move up to 10. But it would certainly cost more than that. Excuse me. Yeah, John, that is spot on. This draft is really working in the Seahawks' favor. 67 of you watching on YouTube. StreamYard's showing 155 through Twitter. So thank you to all of you. I believe if you comment or reply on Twitter, it'll come up. I can show it on the screen. So over 200 of you watching at the moment. Thank you. There you go. There you go. See? This is, man, Daniel Jeremiah is one of the best in the business. He just mentioned this on the air that, hey, maybe Minnesota wants to jump up. If you're the Jets, you could be crafty here, get an extra pick for moving down a spot, just so the Vikings wouldn't have to worry about someone else coming up. They're taking JJ McCarthy here, and they still get to keep pick 23. Like, you talk about the winners of the draft so far. The Vikings are going to get their future, their franchise quarterback. They don't have to play him right away if they don't feel like he's ready. They got Sam Darnold, but they still get to keep pick 23. That's a win. That's a win. And we get our first trade of the day, and it's a 1-pick trade. So let's go through this again. Jets are going to take Bowers or a tackle. Does Denver take Bo Nix? And then what do the Raiders take? Like, this is an interesting one to me. Like, it would make sense for them to take the best defensive player on the board because that's what's going to be left. And then New Orleans and Indianapolis, I think, are going to take offensive players. So really the Broncos, Raiders are the only two teams standing in the way of – wow. Which, again, if we get down to Seattle now, Troy Fashanu and all those defensive players are still on the board, you're going to take phone calls. You're going to look for opportunities to move back. Maybe just a small move back. Maybe Pittsburgh coming up to 16 to take Barton if the Seahawks are okay with that. Dave says, come on, Byron Murphy. I mean, that's my guy. That's the guy that I would – that Fashanu or Murphy. God, that's such a great move for the Jets. Move down 1 pick and get extra selections out of it and still get the guy you're going to take at 10. That's pretty sly. I think Minnesota's a great situation for JJ McCarthy, who I'm really high on. I know some people aren't. I think he has a tremendous, tremendous ceiling. Terrence says, I think it ruins Seattle's chances to pick in the second. Not necessarily true, because a couple more tackles are going to go before 16. And not a single corner is going to be taken. That's the way I think this is shaping out. I don't see, maybe Denver. If they don't go quarterback, maybe they go corner to pair with Surtain. So that could be one. But the corners and the second tier of tackles, teams are desperate for one of those guys. There's still an opportunity for someone to come up. I mean, getting a second-round pick was going to be difficult anyway because teams just don't give those up easily. But if you think in terms of, if they move back a couple of times, pick up a couple of thirds and fourths, you can use those to move up later on and target a guy that you like. Oh, yeah, Taryn, I don't think – I know there's been a lot of buzz among fans, but I don't think trading DK Metcalf is anything that was on the radar, even remotely, of the Seahawks this draft period. I just don't think – I don't think that's something they were even considering. Yeah, that was a big deal. I know Salk's been on that train for months. I just I never considered it. I want to see what Ryan Grubb does with him. I'm of the opinion that DK is an elite talent and that they haven't gotten the best out of him yet because I don't think we've had a really great coordinator. All right, so the Vikings pick is in. It's obviously going to be JJ McCarthy. So 4 quarterbacks in the top 10 and still not a defensive player taken. Luke says we should keep our wide receivers. Also, I know Bobo's limited, but I think we can get more out of him this next season. I agree. I'm incredibly high on Ryan Grubb, and he's just one of those guys I love watching interviews with him because I feel like I get smarter watching him. Mike, do you think Green Bay would call Seattle about moving up? Up until the last week or so, I thought that was a perfect trade match because Couple of reasons. Packers have 11 picks in this draft. They had the youngest roster in the league last year and yet made the second round of the playoffs. Jordan Love looks legit. They look like a contender whose window is opening for a pretty long window of contention. So rather than wanting 11 more rookies, wanting more volume, that they might be willing to target some blue chippers and want to move up to where, because they likely don't have 25 first-round grades, but they might have 16 first-round grades. So the opportunity to move up to 16 to get a guy that they really have conviction about made sense. There's a match there in the third round, too. They have some extra picks right behind the Seahawks pick at 81 if they want to slide back from there. But some recent comments from their GM have indicated that they love having picks. They might even move down. They like to accumulate more. They like to take more bites at the apple. I'm not sure Green Bay is a great trade partner. I think it's kind of Philly or bust maybe at 16. Maybe you could slide back 4 spots to 20 with Pittsburgh for them to come up and get Barton if you don't want Barton, and you get some value there. Terrence says, I don't think Bobo was limited. I think they're just talking about, like, physically there's certain things he can't do that other receivers can. But I think he can be a huge weapon in a Ryan Grubb offense. I think he could play almost a tight end role where sort of imagine the way the Rams use Cooper Kupp, like as a slot sometimes, like as a bigger slot. I think that'd be a fun way to use Bobo, middle of the field. So for fans, let's just kind of speculate here now. For fans who really want Fashanu to be the pick at 16, I think New Orleans is the only team really that stands in their way. Alt's off the board. Latham's off the board. Does New Orleans – okay, here's the Vikings pick. It's McCarthy, right? Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great fit. I really do. I think that is an outstanding – fit for him. If you're a Viking fan, you should be elated. You really should. I believe in their coach. I think he's a really sharp dude. And I mean, McCarthy's going to start games in 2024, right? They're not just going to sit him on ice. He'll play. He might just go out and win that job outright. Yeah. DJ keeps comping him to Alex Smith. I think he's got more upside than that. That's my favorite throw he ever made, where he throws it over the shoulder of the guy with his back to him and in front of the safety. All right, let's think ahead. Jets, in my opinion, have to. I know they signed some veterans, Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, right? Those are old dudes that have injury histories. I think they got to go tackle. Whether you prefer Fashanu, this could be Fautanu. They liked Fuaga early in the process. Let me hop over to Twitter and see what's some of the reporters that cover the Seahawks have to say. Well, made the mistake of checking Twitter, so now I know who the Jets are taking. So they're going, but let's talk about it. And I'm not going to make a habit of doing this. I want to try and stay true to the feed I'm watching. Olu Fashanu is the pick to the Jets, so they do go tackle, and that makes a ton of sense, absolute ton of sense for them. Not a single defensive player has gone off the board yet. This draft could not be going any better. Now, we've heard for months the speculation was in mock drafts, Bo Nix to the Broncos at 12. We heard they like him. They've spent a bunch of time with him. They've worked him extensively. There's some similarities stylistically to how he played and how Drew Brees played. Does Denver go Bo Nix here, or is this an opportunity now for Denver to trade down and maybe get Nix later if that's who they're targeting? Or at this point, maybe Nix does fall into the second round. Where's Denver go corner? They could go corner. I could see them going Quinyon Mitchell here, or Terry and Arnold to go kind of bookend with Surtain. And then the Raiders, are they just reeling right now because Penix isn't on their board? Interesting that Penix went that high too, because man, anytime I would ever mention him on an episode, I would get multiple comments on my YouTube page about what a waste of a pick that would be, that Penix is a third-round talent. I've bookmarked all of those. We'll see in a couple of years how that works out. Taryn Rattler in the first round at 13. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I could see that. I think that's, once Nix goes, and I have read that there are teams that like Rattler more than Nix. So now there is a question, especially depending on what Denver were to do after the Jets pick here. If Denver doesn't take Nix, then the question does become who's the next quarterback to go. Could be Rattler before Nix. That's a good pick for the Jets. They've needed to address that. I mean, they did a couple years ago, but Mekhi Becton just busted. Has Tyron Smith played some guard too? When he was battling injuries, didn't he slide inside and play some guard? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm thinking of the other kid they took in the draft a couple of years ago. That's a similar name. All right. Just to update, 11 picks in, all offense. All right, Denver got their pick in quick. What do you think this is? I'll be surprised if it's Nix. I really will. I just think it's early for him. I like him. First mock draft I did this entire year with Michael Thompson back in February. We had the Seahawks taking Bo Nix at like 20, I think they were at the time. Maybe it was before the season was over. Yeah, they got that pick in quick. I'm going to force myself not to look at Twitter to see who the pick is because it's probably already in. Again, this pick is huge for the Seahawks because if it is Nix, or I don't know, Brock Bowers, could you see Peyton wanting that kind of a weapon to work with on offense? If it's Nix, it again keeps the entire defensive board moving down to the Seahawks, although I feel like it's probably a corner. I guess it could be defensive line. Maybe this would be a spot for Murphy. I hope not. They signed Zach Allen last year. The Seahawks tried to get. They let Draymond Jones walk. I think this could be Byron Murphy, or it could be Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold. but we're rooting for offense. We're definitely rooting for offense here. Are you getting nervous? We're getting close to something. We're getting either close to a pick or a move. Oh, man. If you're watching NFL Network, so they're the bug on the bottom, right? The banner on the bottom, it says the pick is in, round 1, pick 12, but they're in commercial. And then along the right side of the banner, they're circling through players that departed in 2024. And it just, a name popped up there and it said safety Brandon Allen. And I looked up and it said pick is in, Brandon Allen, in the same spot that they actually put the pick when they make it. And I thought, did we just witness the greatest reach of all time? Did the Broncos just take a player at 12 that I've never heard of? No, Mike, don't tell us. All right. Come on, Broncos. Get desperate. Take the quarterback. I actually think it'd be a good fit. I mean, you can argue all day whether it's value, whether you take him too high, but you don't get many opportunities to take franchise quarterbacks. And when you can take him, you take him if you have conviction, if you believe in the guy. Sometimes it always doesn't line up and become, the perfect pick at the perfect time. No, don't say it in the comments. I'll boot you out. No, I won't. I won't really. Come on. Let's call the pick. Let's make it. I'm not looking at my comment section right now. I just don't want to see it. Come on. Make the damn pick. So DJ's showing his best available. He's got Bowers, Arnold, Fuaga, Fashanu, Mitchell, Turner, Verse, Latu, Brian Thomas Jr., Byron Murphy. The way the board is falling right now, and we'll see what the Broncos do with this pick here. I'm inclined for the Seahawks to stick and pick because they're going to get a blue chipper. I have some things to I have some opinions about value and how to use this pick when we're on the clock, but I'll save it for that. Yes. Wow. I can't believe they did that. I cannot believe. Like, I just got finished saying that it made sense, right? But sometimes what I love about watching these drafts is you don't know how you're going to react to certain decisions until they happen. Like, the fit is perfect, right? The fit is perfect. It really is. He's going to start from day one. He's ready to play right now in the NFL. And Sean Payton is probably the perfect guy. He's gonna only give him as much of the playbook as he can handle at first. And then he's going to expand it more and more. It's the perfect fit. It really is. But I just didn't really think it was going to happen. But now here we are. The Seahawks are 4 picks away. And every single defensive player is still on the board. Now, Vegas is most likely at this point, I would think, going to take a defensive player now. right? You have to. They have some needs there. They added Christian Wilkins to the defensive line to go along with Max Crosby, so maybe it's corner. This might be a little high for Cooper DeJean. They've got to be, if you're the Raiders right now, you got to be reeling. You're going to plan B, C, D. By all accounts, the Raiders came into this draft eyeing quarterback and wanting Michael Penix, and all 6 quarterbacks are off the board. Maybe they get Rattler later, but my goodness. Bo Nix, draft projection has been all over the board. This made sense a couple months ago. Then he'd fallen out of the first round. He was a second-round pick, everybody was saying. So, yeah, the Raiders rushed up and put the pick in because they're going to take a defensive player here, right? I don't know. They have other needs. Maybe it is. Maybe it's one of the tackles. But this gets really fascinating because depending on who they take, New Orleans taking an offensive lineman. Indianapolis, I believe, is taking a receiver. Seattle could be in prime position here to take a guy that they really believe in. And it as it sits right now, no matter what the Raiders do here, and I'd be surprised if it's Murphy here after they just invested in Wilkins. I would think maybe a boundary player or a guy like Brock Bowers. But, man. X-Wing says, am I the only one that thinks Sean Payton's overrated? He's good, but I don't think he's the miracle coach everyone seems to think. I don't know. We'll find out. He couldn't make it work with Russell Wilson, and he just ended up getting the 6th best quarterback in this draft. Come on, who are the Raiders taking? If the Raiders go offense here, if the Raiders take Brock Bowers here or another tackle to who's their guy? Colton Miller there, right? Maybe one of the tackles, maybe Fashanu goes here. Offense, come on. Bowers. Holy shit. This is getting crazy. New Orleans is going to take a tackle. Maybe Indianapolis's plans change when they look at their board because of all the defensive players are left. But at worst right now, unless New Orleans trades out, and maybe they should. Well, at worst, no matter what happens at worst right now, Seattle's going to get one of the top 3 defensive players in this draft. Here's the thing that gets really exciting, right? Howard says, love that reaction, Dan. Best of the day so far. This is what I love about the draft. It's not just what the Seahawks do. I'm fascinated by what other teams do too. But holy shit, if we have talked about Troy Fashanu for a long time, but let's focus on defense because here's that conversation I told you I wanted to have about value. I love Troy Fashanu. Absolutely love him. Would want him to be in a Seahawk uniform forever. But at 81, there are Pro Bowl and All-Pro level upside guards all day long at 81 and 108 or whatever the next pick we have after that. This is a deep draft to that position. But the cliff for edge and defensive tackle between now and 81 is severe. Severe. So you could take Fashanu at 16, unless the Saints do here. But then in the third round, you're faced with third, fourth, fifth tier defensive linemen, maybe rotational guys. Not a lot of all-pro upside there. You take one of the top defenders here, you can still get a starting, like a rookie starting level, long-time starter guard later. That's why defense makes so much sense here. And we have talked about Murphy. We've talked about Verse. But Dallas Turner still being available, the top edge player with maybe the highest ceiling of all those guys. Man. So the Saints taking this long tells me that there's some teams looking to move up. Maybe this is that spot, reportedly Philly's been calling everybody. And they're looking up their board and they want that corner. And they have a chance to get the best corner in the draft. There can't possibly have ever been a draft before where the first 13 players were all offense, right? I don't want to look at Twitter, but if any of you have seen that, you can confirm that for me. That's insane. Especially given the direction the league is headed. Like, offenses are so wide open now. All these teams went out and hired Mike McDonald's disciples this year to try and install his scheme to try and slow down these offenses. And yet we get to the draft and the first 13 picks are offensive picks. Yeah, New Orleans might be. I could see Philadelphia trying to trade up here and get up and get a Quinyon Mitchell or a Terrion Arnold, whoever they prefer. I'll tell you this, for those of you worried about the Seahawks taking Cooper DeJean, if they stick and pick at 16 with the way the board's falling now, it ain't going to be DeJean. Well, I guess never say never when it comes to the Seahawks, right? But I think they're going to be looking to build from the front to back and from the middle out, and I think they're looking trenches. Okay, Dave says 13 straights never happened. I can't imagine that it had. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 and 13 straight offensive players. Insane. Wow. So many stories. Okay, the Saints are still on the clock. I bet we can get a trade here. We'll get a trade, and it'll be for a defensive player. So one of the guys on the board that the Seahawks probably have very, very highly ranked will come off the board here, I would imagine. Because the Saints can move back. If it's Philly to 22, they can move back to 22, and they can still get a Fuaga or Fashanu, or you get back into that, down in that next range. Marius Mims, Guyton from Oklahoma, Jordan Morgan from Arizona might sneak into the first round. There's a little bit of Roger Rosengarten. Excuse me. Roger Rosengarten buzz maybe getting into the end of the first round. Yeah, they're taking this one right down to the wire, which might indicate that they're just not getting the offer they want. Teams are a lot tougher to sway these days, as I was saying earlier. Yeah, Trevor Penning's been a bust. Ramczyk is hurt. If they're not getting an offer that they love here, they may just stick and pick. And so minute 53 on the clock left is what I'm seeing right now, depending on when you're seeing this feed. But Seahawk fans, you want the Saints to say no and stick and pick here because they're going to take a tackle. It could be Fashanu, though, so I guess it's good news, bad news. But right now, I'm of the opinion that defense first is the way for this draft to go. It's the way that, as I've run simulations for the last 2 months, has continued to look better. The pick is in. This has to be good news for the Seahawks. The Saints take a tackle here. It may be Fashanu, and that will disappoint some of you. But it could be Taliese Fuaga. It could be Marius Mims, who has tremendous athletic upside. It could be Tyler Guyton as well. Wow. And again, as much as everybody has speculated that the Colts, who are next, are looking receiver, and they might. I mean, you imagine, you think about pairing a Brian Thomas with Pittman, or if you want a little bit different receiver, maybe a Leggett or an Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Okay, I just peeked. Damn it, David. We have a rule here. No spoilers. If it is Taliese Fuaga, then things become even more fascinating for the Seahawks at 16. I don't want to get too – well, screw it. If Fuaga is the pick here and Indy does go receiver, it literally is the perfect scenario for the Seahawks at 16, because you have Troy Fashanu still sitting there, and every single defensive player. In that case, if I can trade back, then I'm doing it. If Philly wants to come up from 22 to 16, even if all they can give us is a third, I'm taking it, because I'm still going to get one of those players that's high on my board and some more assets later that I can use to move up if I want to. But the stick and pick possibilities are going to be as good as you could possibly imagine now at 16, the way this board is falling. Yeah, if this is indeed Fuaga, which I've seen in a bunch of mocks the last couple of days, it makes sense here. Yeah. The interesting thing about Fuaga being the pick here, though, is I don't know that he can play left tackle. So you're going to stick with Trevor Penning? You're going to keep him at left tackle and hope he can still take that next step? Unless they see Fuaga as a guy that can flip over to the left side. Maybe they do. All right. If the Colts go offense here, I think we're already into territory where none of us could have imagined things falling any better or more favorably for the Seahawks here at 16. This is nuts. 14 straight offensive players, not a single defensive player has yet to come off the board. Unfortunately, this year the Seahawks don't have their War Room cam that they used to stream on their website. It'd be fun to be watching them work the phones right now. Okay, yeah, they just asked Jeremiah about that on the telecast, and he said he thinks that Fuaga would be better on the right side. So I guess maybe they stick with Penning, or maybe it's such a deep draft that they have someone later on that they can pick up that might project more at left tackle. So, yeah, now if you're the Colts, you're sitting at 15, and maybe you had your heart set on a receiver. But you never would have imagined in a million years that you'd be sitting there looking up at your board and every single defensive player on your draft board is still available. Look at this list from Daniel Jeremiah: Terrion Arnold, Quentin Mitchell, Dallas Turner still there, Jared Verse, Latu, Byron Murphy, Chop Robinson. Come on, Colts. Take a receiver. Take Brian Mitchell. Or Brian Thomas, I'm sorry. Get your number 4 overall pick, Anthony Richardson, franchise quarterback. Get him more weapons. Take a receiver here. Yeah, wow. You know who else is happy right now? Spencer Rattler. Because now he's the next guy, right? 6 of them off the board in the first 13 picks. I don't think there's a scenario where he sneaks into the back of the first round, but he might have jumped from a third rounder to a second rounder today. Like, where do the Raiders missed out, right? Well, they're sitting there at 44. They take Spencer Rattler there. Come on, Colts. Rappaport saying that Latu might be a match in Indy, which I'm cool with because I really didn't have him on the Seahawks draft board anyway. I don't know that he'd be there from a medical standpoint, but I just don't think he matches that sort of physical profile that Mike McDonald wants. More of a flashy kind of a technician as a pass rusher, not known as a great edge setter, run defender. If the Colts don't go offense here, then Latu would be almost just as good of a pick. No, but they're working the clock. Sorry about that. You have to wonder if the Colts are a little disappointed that Bowers isn't on the board here as they look to get to weapons. Maybe he would have been a focus to give Richardson another weapon as opposed to an outside receiver. Come on. Probably the worst place to be is when you're on deck in the draft. You're a pick away and you're waiting for the pick ahead of you. TD says CBS has our needs as interior offensive line, linebacker, safety, edge, tight end. I don't know, the lack of defensive tackle there. Like, we have more depth. We're in much better shape this year than we were a year ago. But you can never have enough defensive linemen. Okay, so the Colts are picking. I still think they would lean to offense because you've got to support your young quarterback as much as possible. See, this is when I wish they would hurry the draft process up a little bit. Like, the pick is in. Like, I get using every second you have on the clock and trying to work a trade and seeing what you can get. But once the pick is in, just walk the card up to the podium and announce it. Don't tell us, Mike. Damn it. I gotta stop looking. Okay, so they do go with Latu. Wow. You guys, this is unbelievable. I'm not sure, as unpredictable as they've been, although the last 2 years have been much more chalky and predictable and predictive when it comes to Seahawks drafts than they had been in a long time. I don't know that there's a name that they can announce if they stick and pick here at 16 that we'd be upset with. I don't think John Schneider probably can believe the situation he's in right now. They're sitting at 16, and only one defensive player has been taken in the entire draft. And I don't think that's a guy that they probably had rated on their board and maybe wasn't on their board at all because of the medicals. And so that would tell you, well, maybe trade back. But if there's a guy that you absolutely think is going to be a difference maker, I do tend to think that if there's an offer there that makes sense, that they might entertain moving back because, again, Byron Murphy, Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, and Troy Fautanu. Those 4 guys. And also, oh, by the way, every single corner on the board. I will have this discussion with you right now. If they stick and pick here, please don't be mad if they take a corner because it will make sense. If they make the pick, it will make sense, and here's why. If they were to take a corner here, it would mean, A, they believe the guy is a potential all-pro, a blue-chip guy, top guy on their board. B, that they plan to play Witherspoon more in the slot where he can be a game wrecker. You know who Quinyon Mitchell is comped most to? Devin Witherspoon. Nasty, sticky in coverage, loves to hit, loves to be around the ball all the time, wants to be great. Just prepare yourself for that possibility. Best player available no matter what. That's what John Schneider says. When they're looking at, he's doing this right now in the VMAC. I wish we could see the War Room camera. He's doing this. And he's not believing what he's seeing. It's insane. Also, by the way, with Latu's history at UW now, that's in the top 15 picks of the draft, 3 former University of Washington players. It's pretty impressive. But yeah, if you know they're working the clock here, or they're working the phones. If you can move back, I'll tell you what though, with what's left on the board, I wouldn't want to move back much farther than 22 to Philadelphia. If Philadelphia wants to come up, if all the reports are true that they want a corner and that they're willing to move up, then we might be able to leverage this into a nice return because every single corner is still there. Hey, you want Quinyon Mitchell? This is where you got to come because Jacksonville might go there. Right? Cincinnati might go corner. The Rams are out of luck. For those of you that were worried about the Rams getting a quarterback, maybe they get Rattler later, but I'm not that concerned about that. Pittsburgh's going Graham Barton if someone else doesn't take him first. I mean, those reports all seem to be consistent and legitimate. Who knows what Miami's going to do? They have needs all over the board, but probably a defensive player. So some combination of, I think there's the corner run is going to happen, and there's some other tackles in there too. You could move down to 22 and still get potentially Murphy, Verse, or Dallas Turner. I wouldn't want to move farther down than 22, though. Maybe you just do a little slide back with Pittsburgh if they want to be sure that they're going to come up and get Graham Barton. Let me see what that move would cost if you go on the Rich Hill chart. If the Seahawks wanted to slide down with Pittsburgh to 20, it's a 35-point drop. Pittsburgh has 2/3. Their second third, 98, is 37. It's almost a perfect match. So if Pittsburgh, by the Rich Hill trade chart, if they wanted to give us 37 to move up 4 spots, maybe Seattle can leverage that into pick 84, which would be an overpay by Pittsburgh. It's 51 points, but it's not that much of an overpay. If they really want that player, hey, they still have another 3rd-round pick to fall back on. Maybe the Seahawks can get 84 out of them to go with 81 to move back to 20 so they can come up and get Graham Barton. They're not even showing the Seahawks clock right now. It's so annoying in the way that they do this sometimes. It's just the inconsistency. It's just like have a format and do it. Okay, the pick is in. We're sticking and picking at 16, according to Taryn. Don't anybody say in the comments who the pick is. So if they're sticking and picking to me, God. Okay, because I do the shadow draft thing, so I got to write this down. I'm going Byron Murphy. Fautanu is kind of who my heart wants, but I'm going to go Byron Murphy just because of the way the the value in the draft that I talked about and being able to get interior linemen later, I'm going to go Murphy on my shadow draft and make that call right now. I'm excited that we're sticking it at 16 because I think they've done a nice enough job in free agency to fill in some of the holes. There's a lot of depth. There's guys at every position. If they don't go Fashanu here, they can get into your offensive line later. The fact that there's every single defensive player is on the board, and Latu, except for Latu, who I don't think was at the top of their board. I think it's a defensive player. I do. And some of you are going to be pissed if it's not Fashanu. But they have their pick. There's been no buzz or connection with Dallas Turner because it was assumed he was going to go 8 to Atlanta this whole time. Jared Verse is a guy that would be a perfect fit. He's kind of, I've seen some Jadeveon Clowney kind of comps to him, speed to power, set the edge, but also big-time strong pass rusher. But Byron Murphy, just a guy that, man, his lower half and the way he can leverage, take on double teams, and there's some pass rush upside. Or maybe they like Dallas Turner better, and they just didn't think they were going to get a shot at him. Verse is a guy that was in town for 2 days on a visit. 2 days. And he was really the only guy of all their top 30 visits that was projected to be in a range potentially above where we pick. I don't know if they met with Dallas Turner at the Combine, but they didn't have a 30 visit with him. Murphy they met with at the Combine. They were reported to have a 30 visit with him also, and then that was canceled. But I think you have to get Mike McDonald a defensive player here. You have to lock down that side of the ball. If it's Troy Fashanu, I'm not mad about that. But again, before this pick is in, I'll just remind you one more time. You can run all the simulations you want in the world. If you take Fashanu here, you don't like what's left defensively up front from 81 and beyond. You don't. But if you take a defensive player here, tons and tons and tons of options later on. Tons of options. Could there be a potential curveball here? I think the curveball would be a corner, as I said before, and I'd be totally on board with it because it would indicate how they want to play, what they want to do, how they want to use guys, and their conviction in a guy. And you'd also be getting, oh, by the way, the top corner in an outstanding cornerback class. If this is Quinyon Mitchell, you guys, celebrate. Celebrate. Set aside any issues of like, I don't know if corner. Good players. Take good players. They've had a chance to work with these guys now. They've done some installs. They had a mini camp this last week. They've had the players in. They've watched all the film. They've had 2-3 months to put the staff together and figure out what they want to do. Whatever pick they make here is going to be the first tell that we've had up until this point of maybe how they view how they're going to build this defense. That's pretty cool how they do the stage. If you guys are watching the coverage and how they do it just all for whichever team is on the clock at that time. I don't want to look at comments right now, but call your shots, you guys. If the pick isn't in yet, call your shots. Who do you think it's going to be? God, nervous. Never, ever saw the draft falling this well for them. All right, here we go. Cool graphics. By the way, we need to get the draft in Seattle. It gets raining today, but they could do it at the convention center, the WAMU, next to Lumen. They could use Safeco Field with the roof, and they could do stuff there. They could do the draft there. Here we go. Remember the days where we'd get nervous every single time they'd come up to the podium to announce a pick because we didn't know who it was going to be, or how much of a reach it was going to be, or how much research we were going to have to do to find out about this player. We haven't had to worry about that the last couple of years. I'm still not used to it, though. I was still expecting a curveball. Dude, you guys, and I know there's somebody, I think his name's Rob, in my Twitter family that we had this discussion about a month ago because I was talking about Byron Murphy and how much I love him, and he's the guy. And he said, "Why are you going to draft a guy in the first round that isn't going to be a starter for you?" And I'm like, bro, that's not how you draft. You take guys that you think are going to be game wreckers and going to be great. And defensive linemen, doesn't matter if you start anyway. Oh, by the way, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill weren't starters on our Super Bowl team. This was my dude. Troy Fautanu, Byron Murphy were my two dudes. This guy is so legit. And I also, someone else came at me about a month ago in regards to Murphy and said, he doesn't have any stats. I said, go watch the film. Watch the Alabama tape. You will see this guy, and I'll do this early next week. I'll put some clips together. You will see this guy take on double teams, and he has a unique ability to anchor, and his lower half is so impressive, and he'll drop, and he'll hold. Wow, Minnesota just traded up from 23 to 17. He'll hold a double team and affect the play and let the other guys make the tackle because he's occupying two blockers. He is so freaking strong. I think there's some wrestling background there, but that's what stands out to me on tape. And there's some pass rush upside too. I think this guy can play the edge, right? He can play a big end. He can move inside or out, kind of Jaron Reed-ish. I think there's some similarities physically to him and Justin Madubuike, and we saw what Mike McDonald did with him, made him a ton of money at Baltimore. I think this is the pick that is going – I think it's going to be universally liked. What do you guys think, right? I'm seeing a lot of tune in, tune out, get out. Hell yes. Howard family, yes. Sean Scotchman, yes. Mike Mandel, wow. Denko, 44, woohoo. Jason Anderson, Murphy, hell yeah. By the way, Howard family, the rumors about the new uniform must not have happened because those rumors it was going to be unveiled when we had our first pick, right? McVirus, 6185, hell yeah, all caps. Larry's Model Shop. Why such a quiet yes? Great pick. I do have other people in the home with me. I just didn't want it. Plus, I was also processing. Here's what I do. Let me know if any of you do this. As the commissioner is going to announce the move, I'm watching his mouth. I want to see the first syllable. And when he went, I couldn't quite believe that he was announcing the guy that I wanted the most. Look at the thumbnail. I got Fautanu on there too, but I got Byron Murphy front and center doing this, right? He has been my favorite guy to take in mock drafts for the last 3 months. I mean, from February on. If it wasn't Fautanu, it was going to be Murphy. And now we get the defensive run. There was some late buzz that Murphy was going to go in the top 10, top 12. Let me read some scouting report stuff. Let's go to Dane Brugler's. He has Byron Murphy the second as his top tackle. Just over 6 foot, 6 1/4, 297. I've heard him weighing over 300 pounds now. 40-yard dash, 4.87. Just put on an athletic clinic at the combine. 10 1/4 inch hands, 32 3/8 inch arms. His wingspan's over 77 inches. He's just 21 and a half years old in a draft that features a lot of older dudes. He is one of the younger defensive tackles in this class. some of the things that Dane says about him. 15 career tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 5 last year. Second team All-American, first team All-Big 12. Did not run a shuttle or 3-cone. 10-yard split was 1.69. Vertical jump 33 inches. Broad jump 9.3, and he did 28 reps at 225 on the bench press. Strengths, power-packed, explosive first-step athlete. Comes off the ball low and strong with natural body flexibility. Lines up in a wide stance. Uses lateral quickness and loose change of direction to access multiple gaps. Texas coaches say he found more of a leadership voice in 2023. Served as a team captain for 4 games. I have heard him described in the last few days as one of the cleanest prospects in this entire draft. There are absolutely no character concerns or concerns about this guy's motor or his love for ball or his ability to commit. And now we know why they canceled that top 30 visit, because they knew everything they needed to know. Here's Dane's summary. He was only a 1-year starter because of all that defensive line depth. Remember last year they had now I'm blanking out. They had Coburn and who was the dude I loved that went to Philadelphia late in the draft? But they had some depth there. Overall, Murphy doesn't have ideal length, but his rare combination of lower body twitch, natural leverage, and power throughout his frame sets his apart. With his disruptive energy, both as a pass rusher and versus the run, he projects as an impact starter who can play shaded nose or 3 technique, similar to Grady Jarrett. Couple of things here. A couple of storylines that may be emerging now. One is I feel bad for Troy Fautanu. I would imagine now that the late reports we got the last couple of days about his knee being potentially flagged, a potential long-term thing going on with his knee there that came up on his scans with some teams. It's a bummer for him. I didn't anticipate him lasting until 18, and he's still on the board. Here's another thing. Had Curtis Allen on the show yesterday. Seahawks salary cap situation is not great. They only have $1.6 million in cap space today. They'll need about $12 million in order to sign all of their draft picks and their practice squad and have contingencies and all of that. Next year, they only have about $2 million available, 2025. So some moves are going to have to be made. One of the most significant moves you could make would be to move on from Draymond Jones. You don't save a whole lot of money by cutting him, but if you trade him, you do. I talked about this defensive tackle class and how quickly it falls off. Could it be? And I know they've said all the right things. They're excited about using him. He's 26, 27 years old, coming off a year in which the whole defense struggled and the coaching staff was fired because of it. Do they legitimately want to work with Jones and think he could fit and see him as a fit? Or with a guy like Murphy now in place, could they field some phone calls of teams in a draft where there's nothing left after the third round, after the second round? Not that's going to contribute for a year or two anyway, just a bunch of developmental players after that. Is there another team that likes Draymond Jones, maybe that was in the market for him as a free agent last year, wasn't able to access the defensive tackle market and the class in this draft? Could that be something that happens in the next couple of days? Just purely speculation. If not, I love the depth. Jaron Reed's 32 years old. Last year was deal. You have Leonard Williams now. We don't know what we have in Cam Young, the 4th-round pick last year. Mike Morris is more of an edge player. Murphy's fun. He's fun and he's exciting. And for the first time in a while, we can start to see the layers now in that defensive line that they're starting to commit to it and build it. Right? Yeah. C-Flex says, finally, we can stop the run. Hayden Lyons says, bulking up the D-line, love the pick. Mike Mundell says, do you really think they'll wait till the 3rd round to pick again? Yeah. They're not going to give up picks in next year's draft to move into the 2nd round this year in a draft that's supposed to be much, much, much deeper next year because we're getting to the end of the COVID extra years. Yeah, no, we're waiting till 81 now. Maybe there's a guy they love at 75, and you can use one of those extra fourths to move up and get him. Maybe they view this in a draft that's not considered to be as deep. Maybe I shouldn't have brushed that question off as quickly as I did. Maybe quality over quantity makes more sense in this particular draft. However, the other side of that is finding a partner. Who's going to want to move out of the third round in a draft that's supposed to fall off on day 3? Probably hard to find a trade partner. We're probably now looking at just 1 pick tomorrow and then 5 picks on Saturday. And I'm okay with that, because if we were going to stick and pick at 16, I just wanted it to be a guy that I felt like is a blue chipper. Get a great player. And I think Byron Murphy has a chance to be that. I think he's an ascending player. You saw what he did in his first year starting at Texas, 21 and a half years old. Sky's the limit on this dude. I could not be more excited. Sean L says Grubb's happy with his pick too, because he doesn't have to play against him again. Let's go to, now that we don't have to worry about spoilers as much, let's check out Seahawks Twitter and see what some of the reaction there is. Here we go. CDB says W pick. I assume that means win, right? John says best defensive tackle in the division already. Big Cat may be there neck and neck with him. It's going to be a cool pairing. Cool pairing. All right, let's see here. Here's a chart somebody just posted from PFF showing defensive interior prospects run stops and pass rush win rates. And Byron Murphy is near the top of this chart. He has his run stop rate is 8%, which is right smack in the middle. It's the median. His pass rush win rate, even though he didn't rack up a lot of sacks, is 14.5%, which was second only to out of this draft class. It was the highest in the class. Highest pass rush win rate in the class, and one of the highest run stop rates in the class. That's exciting. And this is funny. Oh, let's do this. Here. I'm going to work on this while you guys continue to tell me how you feel about this pick. Michael Santalonza. Am I saying that right? Santalonza. Love this pick. Would have hated for the Rams to draft Murphy after Donald retired. Right? That's a win-win. Okay, there's something I got to update here, and then I'll show it to you. This is when things get kind of fun. Okay. Just working on a little graphic here for you guys. Okay. Okay. I think you guys are going to like this. This is when it starts to get cool. So go there. Oh, that's funny. So we know the Rams traded first-round picks there for years, right? I did not realize that this is the first time since Sean McVay has been coach of the Rams he's had a first-round pick. All right, just working on this. Let me get this one thing up here, and then we'll show you updated draft class. All right, so here's the updated Seahawks draft class for 2024. This is what it looks like. So if you're worried about not having to make a pick until 81 tomorrow, well, this is the draft class so far. We're a little bit ahead of the game. Byron Murphy, the second defensive tackle, Texas in the first round. Leonard Williams, defensive tackle in the second round out of USC. So Seahawks go defensive line in Mike McDonald's first year as head coach in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. And then Sam Howell with a mid 4th round pick also. So they have addressed quarterback there as well. How do you feel about that? Good pronunciation. Thank you, Michael. As a guy who has a last name that gets butchered all the time, I feel you. Sean says, just went to watch tape. Yeah, see if you can find – I have a database I subscribe to. I don't know if I could share it. But see if you can find Murphy versus Alabama 2023 All-22 and just watch him. He's just impacting every play. Every single play. And my recollection in that game is Alabama really tried to run the football, establish a ground game, and Murphy was just shutting it down for everybody else. All right, you guys, here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm not going to carry this stream all the way through to the end of this round. Now that the Seahawks are done, I think I'm going to sign off. I'm going to watch the rest of this, put some notes together, and then I'll do maybe a quick recap show tonight. If I don't, then I'm going to once the draft is over, because then the simulators kick in and they update, and then I'll do a mock draft simulation for the rest of the draft. Okay. Thank you so much for everybody who watched, commented, joined in, the super likes and the super thanks for contributing to the show. I really appreciate that. I love doing this because I love talking about the Seahawks, but I love talking about it with people that also feel the same way. So thank you so much for supporting the show and the channel. So I'm going to sign off for now, and then look for my recap show in a little bit. And then we will, I'll do a recap show tomorrow as well. I will not live stream. Maybe I'll hop on live just kind of informally when the Seahawks are on the clock. We'll see. We'll see how things go. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Go Hawks. Forever and always go Hawks. And look for my recap show.